The valley lay still, unnervingly still, as though the world itself was holding its breath. Commander Robert Hale crouched low behind a jagged wall of stone, his gloved fingers wrapped tightly around the grip of his M4 rifle. Every exhale came out as a pale cloud in the icy Afghan night. The frost-bitten air carried the sharp scent of dust and cordite, and somewhere far above, the wind whispered across the cliffs. Scattered across the shattered ruins, the other members of his SEAL team hugged whatever cover they could find. Their mission had been simple on paper: infiltrate under the cloak of darkness, grab a high-value insurgent commander, and get out before dawn. The intel had seemed flawless, but the moment their boots touched dirt, Hale knew something was wrong. They hadn't been the hunters. They were the prey. From the shadows of the cliffs, enemy fighters had erupted like a swarm of hornets, disturbed from their nest. Gunfire ricocheted in the narrow canyon, the crack of AK-47s echoing off the stone like cruel laughter. RPGs whistled overhead, their explosions showering the team with earth and debris. It had been 3 relentless hours since that first burst of fire, and now their ammunition was dangerously low. "Commander," Chief Petty Officer Michael Torres's voice came faint over the chaos, just enough for Hale to hear over the rattle of incoming rounds. "We can't hold them much longer." Hale peered over the ridge of rock, scanning the ridgeline through his scope. Shadows darted between boulders. The telltale glint of rifle barrels flashed in the moonlight, and somewhere in the darkness, the low, muffled thunk of another RPG launch echoed. The ground trembled a second later, dust sifting from the shattered wall above his head. Their exfiltration route had been cut off. The man with the radio, Sergeant Callan, their JTAC, was dead, a neat bullet hole between his eyes. Hale knew that without close air support, they wouldn't last another 10 minutes. He grabbed the handset, fingers numb from the cold, and keyed the mic. "Viking, this is Ghost 2-1. We are danger close. Repeat, danger close. Requesting immediate CAS." Static hissed in his ear. A cruel pause before a voice, calm, steady, and unmistakably female, came through. "Ghost 2-1, this is Hawkeye. 10 mics out and an A-10 fully loaded. Mark your position." Hale frowned. He'd never heard this call sign before. New pilot. That wasn't necessarily good or bad, just unknown. "Hawkeye, we've got friendlies at grid 269 by 413. Hostiles all around. Danger close. Less than 100 meters. A beat of silence, then her reply. "Copy, Ghost. I'll paint the sky for you." The SEALs pressed themselves tighter against the stone as Hale felt his own pulse in his ears. Somewhere far above, a faint rumble grew, like an approaching storm. "There she is," Torres muttered, spotting a silver glint slicing across the dark sky. "I've got visual on your position." Hawkeye's voice came through again. "Hold tight. I'm coming in low." The first thing Hale noticed was the sound. It wasn't the high-pitched whine of a jet screaming overhead. No, this was deeper, slower, the kind of growl that settled into the chest and made bones vibrate. The sound rolled down the valley walls, carried by the freezing wind, until it was impossible to ignore. Through the fractured gap in the wall, he caught sight of her, low, silver, and lethal. The A-10 Thunderbolt II looked nothing like the sleek fighters on recruiting posters. This was a beast, a flying tank with stubby wings and an ugly snout that housed one of the deadliest weapons in existence, a GU-8 Avenger cannon, a monster of a gun that could chew through armor like paper. The insurgents saw her too. Their muzzle flashes shifted upward, spraying the night sky with tracers like frantic fireflies. From somewhere on the south ridge, a shoulder-fired rocket spiraled into the air, its exhaust flaring white-hot. Hawkeye didn't flinch. She banked sharply, the A-10 dipping so low that for a heartbeat Hale thought her wingtips might scrape the canyon walls. Then came the sound, a guttural BRRT that was more felt than heard. The GU-8 opened up, spewing molten death in a straight line across the enemy position. Orange sparks erupted along the ridge where insurgents had been firing. Stones shattered into clouds of dust. Dirt geysered skyward. Hale could almost feel the impact of each 30 millimeters round through the soles of his boots. "Sweet mother of," whispered one of the younger SEALs, eyes wide behind his goggles. The first pass bought them breathing space. The ridgeline erupted into chaos as fighters scrambled for cover, dragging the wounded, abandoning their firing positions. Hale's instincts screamed to move, but he held the team in place. If they ran now, they'd be cut down before they'd taken 20 steps. "Hawkeye, good effect on target," Hale said into the mic, but they're regrouping at the south ridge. "Copy, Ghost." Turning for another run. The engines roared as she banked hard, swinging wide over the valley. The sound of her climb echoed for a moment, and then she dove again. This time she came in even lower, the muzzle flash from the cannon lighting the valley in strobe-like bursts. Every shot carved deep scars into the earth, and Hale swore he could smell the acrid tang of burning metal and scorched earth even from this distance. Each pass was surgical, controlled bursts, precise strikes that obliterated enemy positions without touching the SEAL's cover. It was as if Hawkeye could see exactly where every man on the ground stood. Torres crouched next to Hale, grinning despite the chaos. "She's good, Commander. Damn good." Hale didn't answer. He was too focused on the rhythm of it, the roar of the light, the brief silence before the next pass. For 15 minutes, Hawkeye owned the sky. Every time insurgents tried to rally, she was there, her cannons silencing them in seconds. RPG crews never got more than one shot before they were swallowed by the GU-8's fire. Snipers were flushed from their perches with pinpoint bursts. Even those who tried to melt into the rock crevices weren't safe. Hawkeye's rounds chewed through stone like brittle glass. Then her voice came over the comms again, steady and unshaken. "Ghost, you're clear to move to extraction point Bravo. I'll cover your advance." That was their chance. Hale tapped Torres on the shoulder, then motioned to the rest of the team. "We're moving. Bounding Overwatch to Bravo. Stay tight, stay low." The SEALs broke from cover in pairs, sprinting across the open stretches of frozen dirt, while their brothers laid down suppressive fire. Above them, Hawkeye swooped and roared, each attack run-timed perfectly to keep enemy heads down. Halfway to the extraction point, a burst of gunfire from the east ridge pinned the second team. Hale's heart lurched, but before he could give the order, the GU-8 thundered again, cutting off the gunfire in mid-scream. "She's reading our minds," Torres muttered as they moved. By the time they reached the extraction zone, the fight was all but over. Smoke hung low in the valley, curling like ghostly fingers through the ruins. The air was thick with the smell of dust, blood, and burning powder. Somewhere far off, a single wounded fighter cried out, the sound fading into the wind. Above them, the A-10 circled high now, a guardian shadow against the moonlit clouds. The rhythmic whoop-whoop-whoop of rotor blades grew louder until the twin forms of MH-47 Chinooks swept into view, their massive rotors chopping the night. The lead bird flared, settling into the landing zone, while its rear gunner scanned the horizon. The SEALs boarded quickly, boots clanging on the metal ramp. Hale was the last to climb aboard. He turned back toward the sky, raising the mic one final time. "Hawkeye, you just saved 12 good men tonight. We owe you." There was a short chuckle in his earpiece. "You don't owe me anything, Ghost. Just do the same for someone else someday." The ramp closed. The Chinook lifted, the battlefield shrinking below until it was just a patch of dark earth in an endless sea of mountains. Yet even as they climbed, Hale could still hear the echo of the GU-8's growl, like a promise carved into the night. The ride back to base was silent, not the comfortable silence of a team returning victorious, but the strained, exhausted quiet of men who knew how close they had come to dying. The only sounds inside the Chinook were the rhythmic thump of the rotors and the occasional metallic rattle of loose gear. Hale sat on the bench seat, helmet resting on his knee, eyes fixed on the floor. The smell of gunpowder still clung to his uniform. Every time he blinked, he could still see flashes of light against the dark valley walls, still hear the guttural roar of the GU-8 ripping through stone and flesh. Across from him, Chief Torres leaned back, staring at the ceiling. His lips curved into a faint smirk, but his eyes betrayed fatigue. "Commander, whoever Hawkeye is, we need her in our back pocket. That woman's flying was unreal." Hale nodded slowly. "She's not just good. She's fearless." No one argued. Even the youngest SEALs, men who'd been ready to push back against any show of praise, remained quiet. They all knew the truth. Without Hawkeye, they'd be zipped into body bags right now. When they finally touched down at the forward operating base, the desert night seemed almost too calm. The air was cold and still, the sky a dome of scattered stars. As the team disembarked, Hale glanced toward the distant runway, half expecting to see the silver shadow of the A-10 gliding into land. But the sky was empty. Inside the operations tent, after debriefing, Hale tried to find out more. He approached the air controller on duty, a wiry tech sergeant with tired eyes, and asked the question directly. Call sign Hawkeye. Who is she? The tech looked up from his console. Captain Sophia Drake, 74th Fighter Squadron, stationed out of Bagram. Why? Hale gave a small smile. Because I owe her my life. The name stuck in his mind like a brand. Sophia Drake. It fit the voice he'd heard over the radio. Calm, precise, unshaken in the middle of hell. But the war had a way of scattering people. For weeks after that night, Hale found himself listening for a call sign whenever air support was mentioned in the briefing room. Sometimes he'd catch a snippet over comms, Hawkeye working with another unit far to the north or south, but never close enough for their paths to cross again. Then, one cold morning just after dawn, he got his chance. The SEALs had been rotated back to Bagram for resupply and maintenance. Hale was walking across the tarmac when he saw it, a hulking gray A-10 parked at the far end, its nose art painted with the fierce eyes of a bird of prey. Underneath the massive fuselage, a figure in a flight suit stood on a maintenance platform, wiping hydraulic fluid from her hands. She was younger than Hale had imagined, early 30s, maybe, but there was nothing soft in her posture. Her eyes were sharp, scanning everything with the quick, assessing gaze of someone who had lived too long in a world where one missed detail could mean death. Captain Drake. Hale called out. She looked up, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her mouth. Commander Hale, you're taller than you sounded on the radio. Hale laughed, the sound surprising even himself. And you're a hell of a lot deadlier. Sophia shrugged, leaning against the landing gear. Just doing my job. He shook his head. No. That night in the valley, you didn't just do your job. You flew into a meat grinder for us. Without you, we'd be names on a memorial wall right now. Her eyes flicked briefly toward the A-10, then back to him. You know, people think pilots are far removed from the fight. They imagine we're up here in the sky, detached. But when I'm in that cockpit, I feel every heartbeat of the guys on the ground. I hear the fear in their voices. I see the chaos from above. And I know one thing. I will never let my people die if I can stop it. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Hale studied her face, seeing not just the skill and bravery, but the weight she carried. She wasn't just a pilot, she was a guardian. You've got a lot of men down here who'd follow you into hell, Hale said finally. Sophia gave a faint, almost shy smile. Then I guess I'm doing something right. The sound of jet engines roared somewhere down the runway, breaking the moment. Another flight was taking off, climbing into the pale morning sky. Hale glanced toward the noise, then back at her. I hope we get you on station again, he said. Her smile turned wry. Careful what you wish for, Commander. If you're calling me, it means you're in trouble again. Yeah, Hale admitted. But I've learned something. If Hawkeye's overhead, trouble has a way of disappearing fast. As he walked away, the image of her standing beneath the great steel wings stayed burned into his mind. Somewhere deep inside, he knew their paths would cross again, and when they did, it would be in another place where the odds were impossible and the stakes life or death. Word travels fast in a war zone, faster than supply convoys, faster than the rumors about new orders, even faster than the wind that sweeps through the mountain passes. By the time a week had passed since that night in the valley, Hawkeye's name was being spoken in tents, mess halls, and dusty outposts from Kandahar to Kunduz. It began as whispers. A ranger platoon returning from an ambush spoke of an A-10 that had dropped in out of nowhere, tearing apart enemy positions before they could be overrun. 2 Marines in a forward base swore she'd flown so low over their foxholes that the blast of her cannon rattled their teeth. An army convoy pinned in a narrow pass claimed she'd circled above them for 40 minutes, shredding wave after wave of attackers until the road was clear. In every story, the details varied, the number of enemies, the terrain, the odds. But there was always one constant. Hawkeye never missed. Hale heard the stories, but he didn't need them to believe. He had seen it himself, felt the shockwave of her strikes, watched her dismantle an enemy force with cold precision. Still, the sheer number of accounts began to impress even him. This wasn't just a skilled pilot making lucky runs. This was someone rewriting the odds in battle after battle. In the cramped team ready room one evening, Taurus tossed down a worn map with fresh intel scribbled across it. "Another unit got her last night," he said, jabbing a finger at a mark near the Pakistani border. 50 insurgents closing on an outpost. She dropped in at 200 feet and wiped them before they even knew what hit them. One of the younger SEALs whistled. "That's insane. At that altitude, she's practically flying inside the fight." Hale looked at the mark on the map. 200 feet in hostile territory wasn't just low. It was dangerous in a way that most pilots avoided unless they had no choice. It left no margin for error. A single lucky RPG could tear an aircraft apart. But from what he'd seen, Sophia Drake wasn't afraid of those odds. "She's not doing this for glory," Hale said quietly. "She's doing it because she refuses to let anyone on the ground die if she can stop it." The younger men fell silent. Even in the bravado-laced world of special operations, that kind of dedication carried weight. Over the next months, the legend deepened. Soldiers began calling her the Angel with Iron Wings, a name that stuck in radio chatter and even made its way onto the side of a fuel truck in spray paint. Some said she could pick a single target out of a mob and hit it without touching anyone else. Others swore she could make the GAU-8 sound different, like a war drum promising salvation. There was one story, told over and over, about a Green Beret team trapped in a canyon with cliffs too steep for a helicopter to get in. Hawkeye had come in so low that her rounds chewed a new path through the rock, creating just enough space for the team to escape. No one knew if it was true, but the way the men told it, you'd think they'd seen her carve the stone with her own hands. Back at Bagram, Hale saw her occasionally, always in the hangar, working on her aircraft with the ground crew, never treating the A-10 as just a machine. She moved around it like a craftsman with a masterpiece, checking panels, cleaning gun ports, running her fingers along the fuselage as if feeling for imperfections. Once, he caught her in the middle of a briefing with new pilots. She wasn't talking about flying techniques or the mechanics of the GAU-8. She was talking about trust. "You've got maybe 4 minutes on station before things get ugly for the people you're supporting," she was saying. "They need to know you're not just up here to tick a box on the mission sheet. They need to hear your voice and believe you're going to do everything in your power to keep them breathing. That's the difference between a pilot they remember and a pilot they forget." Hale didn't interrupt. He just stood there for a moment, listening. It was the same conviction she'd shown in the valley, the same unshakable resolve. But in war, legends draw attention, and not all of it good. Enemy fighters began learning her call sign too. Hale heard intercepted chatter talking about the bird that kills and bounties offered for anyone who could take her down. It didn't surprise him. When you changed the outcome of battles, you made enemies. One evening, just before a mission, Hale found her in the hangar again. She was tightening a panel near the cannon housing, her flight suit smeared with grease. "They're talking about you out there," he said. She glanced up, smirking faintly. "Good. That means they're thinking about me instead of thinking about killing you guys." Hale shook his head. "It also means they'll be gunning for you harder." She straightened, meeting his gaze. "Commander, if they're shooting at me, it means they're not shooting at you. That's a trade I'll take every time." He wanted to argue, but there was no point. This was who she was. A pilot who flew lower than anyone else dared. A woman who'd rather take the fire herself than see another soldier's name etched into stone. And though he didn't say it out loud, Hale knew something with absolute certainty when the next storm came. And it would. They would need Hawkeye more than ever. It was the kind of mission that never looked dangerous on paper. A simple recon sweep into a high valley, low risk, minimal expected contact. Hale had learned long ago that those were the ones that could kill you. By mid-afternoon, The light was fading behind jagged peaks. The air was thin and cold enough to sting with every breath. The team moved quietly along the rocky trail, the crunch of boots on frozen gravel the only sound. Then, like a spark on dry tinder, the first shot cracked. An instant later, the mountains erupted. Automatic fire poured down from hidden positions. Grenades burst among the rocks, throwing dirt and shrapnel. Hale's team dove for cover, but the enemy had them bracketed from 3 sides. Contact front high. Torres shouted, returning fire with short, sharp bursts. The valley was a kill box. Every route out was covered. The insurgents knew the terrain. They'd been waiting. Hale keyed his mic, voice tight. Viking, this is Ghost 2-1, troops in contact, heavy fire. Grid 431 by 862. Request immediate CAS. Static answered him. The comms were patchy this deep in the mountains. He tried again, forcing the words out between bursts of return fire. Danger close, repeat, danger close. Any station, this is Ghost 2-1. The reply cut through the static, like sunlight breaking storm clouds. Ghost 2-1, this is Hawkeye. I'm 12 mics out. Hold your ground. The relief was physical. Hale felt it in his chest, in the way his shoulders eased for half a second. Hawkeye, enemy all around. Less than 100 meters. We're pinned. Copy, she said. Mark your position. I'm coming in low. They popped smoke, thick red clouds curling into the mountain air. Seconds later, the first low rumble reached them. The insurgents must have heard it too. Their fire intensified, desperate to finish the job before the Angel arrived. Then she was there, dropping into the valley like a predator with steel wings. Her A-10 sliced through the thin air, close enough for Hale to see the paintwork on her nose art. The GAU-8 roared, that deep, bone-shaking BRRT, tearing the silence apart. The ridgeline in front of them erupted in sparks and dust as enemy positions disintegrated. Every pass was precise, every burst a shield between the seals and death. The cannon chewed through rock, dirt, and men with equal ease. The insurgents broke, tried to scatter into the gullies and caves, but she was already swinging into another run. Hawkeye, East Ridge, they're regrouping, Hale called. On it. Her voice never wavered, even under fire, even flying low enough for stray rounds to ping against her fuselage. She was steady. She rolled into the turn, dipped her nose, and the valley lit again in the strobing fire of the cannon. For 20 minutes, she kept the wolves at bay, cutting down every position that dared to open fire. The team moved in bounding leaps toward the extraction point, each rush covered by the sound of her gun and the shadow of her wings. When they reached the LZ, the Chinook was already on approach. Hawkeye made one final pass, strafing a treeline where muzzle flashes winked in the dim light. Then her voice came again, quieter now. You're clear, Ghost. Get your boys home. The SEALs piled into the bird, adrenaline still sharp in their veins. As the ramp closed, Hale looked out through the side door. The A-10 banked above them, climbing toward the pale sky. He keyed his mic one last time. Hawkeye, you've done it again. We'll never forget this. There was a pause, then her reply, gentle, almost distant over the crackle of comms. Just keep running toward the fight, Commander. I'll be right behind you. The Chinook lifted, the valley falling away beneath them. Below, smoke curled from the ridgelines. Above, the sound of the GU-8 faded into the wind, leaving only the thrum of the rotors. Weeks later, Hale stood in the ready room, staring at a new map tacked to the wall. A fresh name had been scrawled across a narrow canyon in thick black marker. Angel's Run. It was the same valley where she had saved them twice now. No one could say who named it, but everyone knew why. The name spread quickly, just like her legend had. Rangers spoke of Angel's Run as a place where death had been turned back. Marines swapped stories about the woman who flew lower than anyone else dared. And for the men who had been there, the name was more than a story. It was a reminder that sometimes survival hinged on a single voice over the radio. Hale still saw her from time to time on base, always near her A-10, talking with the crew or checking the gun. Once, he asked her if she'd heard about the new name on the map. Sophia had smiled, that faint, knowing curve of her lips. I didn't save a valley, Commander. I just made sure my guys could get out of it." He had shaken his head. "You saved more than that, Captain. You gave us something to believe in when everything was falling apart." She didn't answer, just looked out toward the runway, where the heat shimmered in the distance. Hale knew she wasn't the type to dwell on praise. She'd be back in the sky soon, ready for the next call, the next fight. In the years that followed, Hale would serve in other places, with other teams. But no matter how far he went, one memory stayed sharp. The roar of the GU-8 shredding the darkness, the calm voice cutting through the chaos, and the silhouette of an A-10 circling high, watching over them. Some called her a hero. Others called her a legend. To Hale, she would always be something simpler, something truer. The guardian angel with iron wings, who never once let them fall.